about him being a two-way star, correct? Stoke, you especially as the receiver. I'm going to lend on your expertise. I get the sense you don't see an above-average receiver, NFL receiver.
Well, I haven't seen enough of him playing the wide receiver position. I think he's an elite-level defensive back, and it's too hard to do both full-time in the NFL. Could you sprinkle him in some on the offensive side? Yeah. So that's kind of the way.
But define sprinkle.
Sprinkle, 8 plays a game? Just to have make the defense have to game plan for him. Sometimes he's the main attraction. Sometimes he's a decoy, running through the middle. A lot of those plays that I did, the decoy route, right? Just you're running for the love of the game, right? But when he's on the field, everyone's going to pay attention to him. There's Travis, and then all of a sudden, you fake the jet sweep to him or whatever the case may be. So I see him being more that type of player on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, everybody talks about him being a natural corner, like that's his best position. And so if that's his best position, then how much could you use him on the offensive side of the ball? And I think you have to understand, what is your base on offense? Because if you're one of those teams that bases out of 3 wide receiver sets out of 11 personnel, he doesn't fit. You can't go in there and you can't say, hey, you're our 3rd wide receiver, and we're going to run you 46 plays a game, because we run 82% of our formations are out of, or personnel groupings are out of 11 personnel. So he'd have to be on one of those teams, like a San Francisco that runs a lot of 2 tights and 2 backs, and they're in and out of things, so you could get him those 8 to 12 plays as the 3rd wide receiver. Like that to me would make sense if he went to a team like that. The Giants, unless they solve their quarterback conundrum, nothing. It doesn't make sense to go that direction unless, like Mel said, you get a Matthew Stafford and trade for him.
Yeah, because and I'm worried about durability, health to a certain degree. I mean, you're talking about 17 games, probably going to 18 games here in the next couple of years. You're investing. You have to look at it from an owner's perspective, a GM, a coach. If those guys think they're going to be there for a while, you invested a lot in this guy, the 3rd overall pick. So I get it. You want him to be able to impact both sides of the football, but also he's not the biggest. He doesn't have the biggest frame, and there's a lot that goes into getting ready to play on Sundays and what you do during the week. And so you worry about his health and his durability, especially with the investment that you're making into him, taking him 3rd overall.
He seems like a real smart, mature young man who I think will fit seamlessly into the NFL and understand work ethic and everything. But do you see any potential for him viewing himself as, hey, I understand that receivers, they get more attention, they get more money, and could you see him bristling and kind of fighting back and being a problem if a team drafts him and doesn't allow him to do more as a receiver? Could you see that, Stoke, being an issue? That
no, not at all.
I just don't. I get the sense because
Deion
says it all the time. Hey, the only reason that this guy can't be a two-way star is because the NFL world is so caught up in their own biases that they can't see through and understand that this guy can do it.
Right. I don't see that happening, but I don't know. I don't know him personally, or he's never had an issue at CU. He's never caused trouble anywhere he's been, from my understanding. So seems like he's a good teammate, works hard, does all the right things on and off the football field. So I don't think that would be a problem. I think that, eventually you might get to a spot where he is able to do some things offensively. But also, I think that's something that when you go through this process, when you sit down with them, that's a conversation to be had from an organizational standpoint.
I always wonder, too, they list him at 6'1", 185.
Correct.
Which, is he really 6'1", and is he really 185? Like, he's a slender dude. And some of the receivers in this league, like, there are times I'm on the field Sundays before a game going, damn, that's a wide receiver? Like, those dudes look different than they used to look. I mean, there's some big, strong, strapping dudes, and like there's a lot of physicality that goes on in the NFL right now. And So I don't know. I mean, the guy's a great football player. Don't get me wrong. He's a great football player. So nothing but the best for Travis, and I'm sure he's going to be great in the NFL. It just is. I just think it's really, really difficult to kind of play both ways.
Well,
obviously.
if he's all right, so let's say 6'1", 185. Marvin Mims is listed at 5'11", 182. So maybe have Marvin Mims in your mind as we're having this conversation. Do you think a Marvin Mims type, you could see him out there for 60 plays on defense and 30 plays on offense week after week?
Look, I mean, but if anyone can do it, it's a guy like Travis Hunter. And I get it. You look at it, but some people can just go. Marvin Harrison wasn't a big guy, but he could just go nonstop. It didn't matter if it was practice on a Thursday, 2 hours and 20 minutes, finishing up with 2 minutes, or if it was on Sunday, get their workout with Peyton before the game, then go play. He could have played 2 games. I mean, some guys are just wired that way, and he didn't get hurt a lot either, and he was a very small guy. So I think with a guy like Travis, some guys just have it, and he was able to do it in college. You go down to TCU and play in that humidity, and you play over 100 plays in the game. I mean, not a lot of people could do that.
Yeah, it sounds like Stokes talking about me. Some guys just have it. They can just go.
Some guys
I'm just a goer.
Let's move on.
Just replace Travis with Stink. I mean,
so Travis Hunter at number 3 to the Giants in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft. So surely Shador Sanders has to be coming up very soon. He actually has him dropping a bit. He has Shador going to the Jets.
Ooh.
Good luck with that, Shador. Going to the dysfunctional Jets at number 7.
How do you think that plays out, guys?
Well, let's get Mel's explanation on that.
He handles the big stage, the bright lights. He's had expectations and pressure. He's had to deal with all that at Colorado. Now he goes to the Jets. Why? Because they went old with Aaron Rodgers, veteran with Aaron Rodgers. That normally leads to a young quarterback now coming in. And certainly for sure he gets the 7 because it's not universal love out there. I had one guy, remember when I said, hey, when Peyton Manning came out, somebody said if his name was Peyton Jones, it'd be a 3rd-round pick. People do revisionist history. There was no universal love out there. Everybody didn't love Peyton Manning. Everybody doesn't love Shador Sanders. I had a guy this week say if his name was Shador Jones, he'd be a 3rd-round pick. So he could get to 7 and be there for the Jets.
Easy, Stoke. Easy.
Whoa,
easy. Relax.
Wow.
Watch your mouth, Mel.
Whoa. My goodness.
Stay in your lane. Just talk about this year's class. All right? Let's not go back and start throwing stones at PFM. I'm in a good mood. I don't want to get pissed off today. I'm just coming off vacation.
Yeah.
Let's keep this thing.
You're just coming off a vacation. You got a little golf going to get played.
Yeah, you don't need to be riled up like that. No,
there's no
So
need.
he has. What do you think, Mark? Having just been around the Jets not that long ago, calling a Jets game, being around the Jets, just picking up, feeling that Jets vibe. How would
Foolishness.
Would you want Shador to go there?
I wouldn't.
Would that be healthy for Shador?
I wouldn't wish the Jets on anybody.
Ooh.
I just and listen, man. I love Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn's a good guy. Played there. Is a great player. 1st-round draft choice. He's big. I mean, the guy retired from the NFL, went into the restaurant business, was very successful, and decided I want to coach. He goes back and coach. Now he's a head coach of the Jets. The guy's been incredibly successful. Did a great job with all the injuries last year in Detroit, but I don't know that you change that culture.
Really, you don't think that he? I mean, you look at some of these guys, and he's been in Detroit with Dan Campbell. We've seen Dan Campbell fix that mess.
Yeah,
I mean, somewhat. I mean,
Saleh couldn't do it.
but I'm just telling you, the ownership there, Woody Johnson, is an absolute disaster.
Do you think now though, because the spotlight was on him this year? I mean, they're talking about his son or grandkid or whatever it was. Is, oh man, he's making some decisions over there, and Woody's like, no, that's not happening. Do you think now he realizes, okay, they finally they hired a new coach and a new general manager together, and he's going to kind of let those guys run the show and get that mess fixed, almost like what happened in San Francisco with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, where finally York was just like, okay, I'm out. Y'all guys do y'all's thing.
Yeah. Well, I just don't think Woody will ever take a step back and let anybody. I mean, he's always going to be involved in some of the things, and it's just some of the stories you hear. It just is. It's ridiculous. It's so dysfunctional. I don't know that anybody could have success in that organization. I'd be hard pressed to say that Deion wouldn't be involved and say you're not going to play there.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Was okay. So we've heard Deion say he's going to let this process play out. because we talked a lot about, well, would Deion try to dictate where Shador and Travis go and make a power play here? Now, if it plays out like this where Shador goes to the Jets, do you think Deion steps in? I mean, he's not going number 1 overall, number 2. You're going 7th. How much power do you have? Do you think he steps in on that?
Isn't that what happened to Eli?
Bright lights?
Yeah, isn't that what happened to Eli, though? The Eli wasn't
But he
first
went
overall.
first.
Did he go first overall?
Yeah, to the Chargers.
Okay, the Chargers. And then they moved
switch.
him on?
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't know. I mean,
But it is New York, the big market there, obviously.
Huge market.
So
Jets are different than the Giants, though.
The Jets are, but all of a sudden you look at it, you are the savior.
Oh, if you bring the Jets back?
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we remember a couple years ago when Aaron went there. I mean, oh my gosh, the madness surrounding New York and the Jets fans about Aaron Rodgers going to bring a Super Bowl. Imagine if Shador takes that organization and all of a sudden they're a winner.
Yeah.
Do you guys get the sense, Mark, especially having been at CU spring practice last year for a couple weekends, for all the bluster, the bravado that surrounds Deion Sanders, do you see him immersing and injecting himself into this whole draft process to the point where he literally tells teams and dictates where Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders are going to go?
I don't know that he dictates, but I do think there are several teams that he would strongly urge not to draft his kids. Like, I mean, Deion understands how important it is where you get drafted and what that organization's about. And, I mean, I'm hard-pressed to say there's only a handful of organizations in the NFL that have the ownership, the coaching, and everything else to win championships. And there are plenty of organizations out there that aren't really run from an ownership standpoint to the point where you have a legitimate chance as a player to win. And I think that Deion is very aware of who those teams are and who those teams aren't. And so do I think he'll be involved? Yeah, not like a helicopter parent, but like, hey, man, this is not a great place for you to go because this organization is not very good. It's not very well run.
Yeah, I mean, to Mark's point, I think if he feels like it's a bad situation, he'll step in and they'll have a power play here. They'll make a move. And so I think it just depends on how he views the organization. If he thinks it's a no-win situation, you don't think Deion's going to step in and say, we're not going there. And you have the power to do it. You've made big-time NIL money the last 2 years if you're Shador or Travis. Either one of those guys have made a ton of money the last 2 years. So if you wanted to pull a move like this, you certainly could. It's easier now than what it used to be. So I think if he thinks it's a bad situation for one of those kids, I don't think he would lose sleep over it at all. He'll make it happen really quickly.
You know what's fascinating about this year? Because last year you had these 6 quarterbacks, right? And we were all debating the 6 quarterbacks,
Sure.
and that was the focal point of, hey, if you're a team that needs a quarterback, it was all about these quarterbacks coming out in the draft. This year is a little bit different because you only have 2 that seem to be established, and you have all these veterans out there, right? You've got Sam Darnold. Where does he go? Aaron Rodgers. Where does he go? Matthew Stafford. Where does he go? Justin Fields. Where does he go? Russell Wilson. I'll put him in here. Russ, you probably don't belong in this conversation, but I'll put you in anyway. I'll show you a little respect. Kirk Cousins.
Unlimited.
Kirk Cousins. Where do you end up? And so
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones. So I wonder, where does Shador stand in the pecking order with all these other quarterbacks? And is it one of those things that we really won't know what's going to happen to a guy like Shador until we see where all these other seats are filled by all these other guys?
Yeah.
It might be like, you could, like I said, New York Jets, right? Mel has the Jets taking Shador Sanders at number 7. My immediate reaction is, well, wait a minute. The Chargers, or the Raiders, rather, go right in front of them at number 6. Wouldn't they be taking a quarterback? By the way, Mel's got the Raiders taking Ashton Genty at 6. So if Mel's onto anything, there goes any chance of the Broncos getting Ashton Genty. He's got Genty going to the Raiders at 6. But I think the reason why you don't automatically put in this mock Shador Sanders to the Raiders is you want to see where all these other quarterbacks end up. Because there's a very good chance that one of these quarterbacks ends up with the Raiders.
Pete Carroll, too. Pete Carroll's going to want to play great defense and be able to run the ball. right? And he'll look at it like, hey, man, I could get a guy like Daniel Jones at a decent price and say, hey, man, we're going to support you. You're not going to be asked to be a total drop back guy. We're going to support you like we did with Russ all those years in Seattle, and we're going to win, through our defense and through our ability to run the ball. And why not Aston Genty then? Like I can see that being kind of the thought process of a Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Look how he won in Seattle with a third-round Russell Wilson, playing great defense, running the football, and then all of a sudden Russ is gone. Okay, we got Geno Smith, right? And we made him a decent quarterback. So I could go get Daniel Jones and then draft a guy in the third or fourth round, build around a good defense and a good running game.
Well, it shouldn't shock you that Mel Kiper has the Broncos taking Colston Loveland.
All right.
I don't think
I'll
there
be
is,
happy with that.
Other than the picks right at the top of the draft, I don't think I've seen a more consistent one team linked with one player more than I've seen the Broncos and Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. And again, it goes back. Everybody's jumping on what Sean had to say about the Joker at the Super Bowl. Here's what Mel writes. Sean Payton's looking for a joker in his offense, someone who can play a few different roles as a playmaker. Had that in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara and Reggie Bush, but he hasn't been able to find the right guy with the Broncos. If you look at what Loveland has done at Michigan and his skill set, he should help fill that role. Has the ability to separate. His 6'5" frame makes it difficult for opponents to match up. Loveland would be quarterback Bo Nix's best friend in the pass game. And as an added bonus, Mel writes, Denver picks two spots ahead of the division rival Chargers, where Jim Harbaugh, Loveland's former coach at Michigan, might be interested in selecting him. So Peyton could block Harbaugh, simultaneously boost his own offense in a big way. That's a great point. I hadn't heard that from anybody else, because the Chargers are 2 spots behind the Broncos.
Nice.
Yeah, and you have Mel taking 2 receivers right after the Broncos picked a tight end, and one of them is a receiver for the Chargers. So, I mean, you look at that. Would you rather that tight end, Loveland, or Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State, or the great wide receiver from Arizona, McMillan? I mean, so you have a choice there if you're going through this mock where you take the tight end, or do you look to upgrade the wide receiver?
I want the tight end.
Yeah, I want the tight end as well.
I want the tight end also. Just okay. So we all agree there. Take the tight end.
Yeah.
Loveland. We would all be happy with that. Hopefully we finally get that position solved.
Yeah, receivers are a dime a dozen. You can get one anywhere.
Just ask
Fourth
flat.
round?
Fifth round.
Where were you?
I mean,
Fourth round?
Yeah, that's where all the
diamonds
diamonds and
hidden
the
gems
rough,
are.
The hidden gems.
Where all the wiry white kids.
Yes. Well,
Fourth
now they
round.
bumped up. Now they jumped up to the second round. But McConkey,
Lad McConkey.
well, you got to get them in the second round now. The McConkeys. Can we find a McConkey?
He loves McConkey.
Right.
Oh my God! If we had McConkey
if
here,
we had a McConkey,
Mark, he'd be staying in the basement.
yeah,
He'd be at the house.
yeah.
Be at the house.
Well, then we'd never get him to practice.
Better not snow. Better not snow.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Hey,
Yeah,
Sean,
don't worry about
McConkey's
that.
not going to be there again today. He can't get down Mount Crumpet.
Touche.
You're not close.
Well, I think the big takeaway from all this is that this is going to be a fascinating offseason with all the veteran quarterbacks out there. And I don't think anybody's going to have a real firm handle on the top of the draft until you see where all these veteran quarterbacks land. So my question is, do all the veteran quarterbacks land before the draft? Or do a lot of teams wait to see what happens in the draft before they go out and start looking at the Justin Fields, the Kirk Cousins, the Aaron Rodgers, all these veteran quarterbacks, the Sam Darnolds? Is it what happens first, Stink? Do we get the veteran quarterbacks off the board, then the draft, or the draft and then the veteran quarterbacks? I think it's going to be the veterans first.
I think the veterans first, except there will be some that we'll see how the draft plays out. There'll be, but the guys that you think are going to play, that like I think you'll see a trade. If a trade goes down, I think you'll see a trade for Stafford first. I think you'll see the Aaron Rodgers thing play out. I think you'll see a couple Sam
I think the
Darnold
Darnold thing
play
will
out.
play out too, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Daniel Jones things plays out, and then the next wave of guys like the Justin Fields and the Russes and all those guys, I think will come after the draft.
Okay.
Yeah, you're spot on. You're going to have a lot of these guys go in free agency because that happens before the draft. And so a lot of teams want to know. And like you said, it's not a great quarterback class. So even if you are in a situation where, okay, we like Shador, we don't think he's going to be there at 9, we need to find our quarterback. You go get your quarterback, and then all of a sudden the draft happens, and Shador's there. You can still take him.
Yeah, sure.
You're not committing to these free agent quarterbacks. The only one that's going to get probably big money, Sam Darnold, possibly. But you're still not committing 5 years, $200 million to him. So after a year or two, after a couple of years, you can move on from him anyway. So I think you're going to see a lot of these guys go at the start of free agency. And then you'll see the trickle down effect where you have the Russes and Justin Fields.
I see. Well, no, you're leaving. I see somebody on the back row there is asking a question. He's curious about his fate.
You like that? You like that?
No, but did you like it?
Yeah. What about our guy Kirk?
I think Kirk will be a guy that people, I mean, coming off the Achilles and everything, did not play exceptionally well, but had some games. I think you'll see him get another opportunity to sign a deal.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of teams that need a quarterback that need to save their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the Titans, teams like that. You're going to want a quarterback to be able to hold down the fort. So if you can't